It's like finding a hidden gem, and the stories behind each piece are just fascinating.
It's important to consider all perspectives.
I agree. Understanding each viewpoint is key, and that's how we find the best solution.
I understand the situation, but we need to proceed with caution and gather more intelligence before making any moves. Our priority is to ensure the safety of our team.
But then, when you're making new content, it feels like that's just a way to express yourself.
Yeah, I think we should probably head back soon. It's getting late.
All right, sounds good. Just let me finish this up.
It's one of those things where you have to experience it for yourself to truly understand.
It's important to understand the context before making assumptions.
Avocados are a great source of healthy fats, fiber, and various vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, I'm just walking through the park now. I should be there in about 5 minutes.
Oh, that sounds good, yeah. So what time are we thinking?
I think that's a good way to look at it. There's a lot of value in being open to new experiences.
The late afternoon sun hung low over the village, its golden rays spilling across the dusty courtyard, where laughter echoed faintly, carried by the gentle breeze. Ni, a fragile little girl with wide, searching eyes, stood uncertainly at the chalked lines on the ground. Two men hovered nearby, watching her with patient smiles. James, dressed neatly even in the countryside heat, bent down to her level, his voice firm yet gentle. "It's your turn, Nye. Slowly now. Stand at this line. Throw, and see where it lands." His hand guided hers as she clutched the small stone, hesitating for just a heartbeat before tossing it forward. The stone landed, wobbling on the square, and her lips parted in a shy smile. James clapped softly. "Good. That's a point." But the rules of the game were harder than she imagined. She had to balance on one foot, hop from square to square without touching the lines, and the moment she faltered, the little giggle escaped her lips. She stumbled, both feet touching the ground. "Oh no, you played it wrong," James teased warmly, shaking his head, then stood up to show her again. "Here, look, only one foot. Don't touch the line. Watch me." He hopped lightly across the squares, his tall frame oddly graceful, then stopped, pretending to wobble dramatically before regaining his balance. Ni's laughter rang out, clear and bright, cutting through the heaviness of the air. For a fleeting moment, the sadness in her young eyes disappeared, replaced by pure childlike joy. Nearby, Diep watched them with quiet affection. She had long ago grown used to James's way of caring. Precise, intentional, yet always filled with warmth. "Do you like this game?" James asked, crouching again beside Nye. The girl nodded vigorously, though her breath came quick from effort. "Yes, but it's hard. When your legs grow stronger, you'll play better," he promised. "And Uncle James will teach you many more games. Not just this one." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, and she leaned into his hand almost instinctively. A child who yearned for tenderness she had been denied for too long. As the sun dipped lower, James glanced at the coop nearby, where chickens clucked restlessly. "They've grown big enough. It might be time to sell them," he said thoughtfully, more to Diep than anyone else. We could use the money to buy more chicks. With this flock, maybe 2 million dong. And then we could buy 5 times more. His tone was pragmatic, calculating, but beneath it lingered a quiet hope. The kind of planning a man did when he was building a future, not just surviving the present. Diep nodded slowly. She knew every bit of money mattered, not just for them, but for Ly. It sounds reasonable, she admitted. The idea of expansion, of creating something sustainable, gave her a spark of cautious optimism. Ly listened, not fully understanding the weight of their conversation, her small fingers tugging at the hem of Diep's sleeve. James noticed and chuckled, leaning down again. Don't worry, little one. Uncle James will also buy toys for you. Many toys. Her eyes lit up, though she tilted her head. Like this game? She asked, pointing at the chalk-drawn squares. James smiled. Yes, and more. Mini ones, so you can play safely. One day you'll have a whole shelf of them. The promise seemed to soothe something deep inside her. Later, they sat together under the shade of the grapefruit tree. James plucked a melon from the vine that had wound its way along the fence. Try this, he said, handing it to Ly. Crisp, fresh, sweet. She bit into it, juice dripping down her chin, and giggled again. James laughed with her, wiping her mouth with the edge of a handkerchief. Diep watched the scene, her heart heavy with gratitude, but also with the weight of uncertainty. For no matter how much they tried to fill Ny's days with joy, the truth of her origin still lingered like a shadow they could not banish. It was not long before the shadow stepped closer. An officer arrived, uniformed and stern, carrying news that unsettled the fragile peace. I came here about Ly, he began. James stiffened, his mind instantly racing to every possibility. What about her? The officer sighed. Her parents, they've gone abroad. Debt forced them. They left her behind. The words struck like blows. Diep's breath caught, her hands clutching Ly protectively. James's jaw tightened, the anger beneath his calm mask barely contained. Abandoned. The child had been abandoned. The officer continued. Her grandparents live 200 kilometers away, but they refuse to take her in. They say she is not their grandchild, only an illegitimate child picked up from the street. The silence that followed was deafening. Ly clung tighter to Diep, her small fingers trembling. James's fists clenched at his sides. Have they agreed to a DNA test? He demanded. Not yet, the officer admitted. They deny her. But perhaps if we take a strand of her hair, we can prove it. Ny's voice broke the tension, soft and hesitant. I don't miss my father, she whispered, eyes downcast. He only scolded me. He hit me. I don't remember him. The pain in her tone cut deeper than any blade. Diep's eyes welled with tears. James reached out, pulling the girl into his arms. You're safe now, he murmured fiercely. You have us. Still, the law demanded proof. And so a single strand of Ny's hair was taken, a fragile thread of hope. James offered to cover all expenses, his voice firm. Whatever it takes, just make them test. But the deeper truth was clear to all of them. This was not just about legality. This was about belonging. About whether a little girl cast aside would ever be claimed by the blood that should have protected her. And as James held her close that night, whispering promises of safety, Diep watched silently, her heart aching with both hope and dread. Because even if the world denied Ly, they would not. They could not. The following days unfolded with a heaviness that seemed to weigh on every heart within the small household. The game Ly had learned brought her laughter in the evenings, but by morning, the air always thickened again with unspoken worries. James rose early each day, his mind caught between business responsibilities and the quiet war he had silently declared, to secure a rightful place for Ly, no matter the cost. His phone buzzed constantly with updates from lawyers, from the officer who had taken the hair strand, from associates who urged him to drop this entire affair as pointless trouble. But James was not a man to abandon those who relied on him. Not Diep, and certainly not the fragile little girl who had come to rest her head on his shoulder each night, as if it were the safest place in the world. In the background of all this, another storm brewed, one that threatened to undermine the fragile peace James tried so desperately to maintain. His younger brother, reckless and spoiled, had fallen into a spiral of excess that now came crashing down upon them. The conversation between them one evening was sharp, bitter, and unrelenting. 100 million, James repeated, his voice low but vibrating with restrained fury. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea what sacrifices I've made? What responsibilities I carry? While you gamble everything away. The younger man shifted uncomfortably, shame and defiance mingling in his eyes. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I thought I could win it back. James slammed his fist onto the table, the sound echoing like thunder. You thought? You thought, while I paid every debt, built every piece of what we have, carried the weight of this family on my back, and now you expect me to clean your mess again? The silence that followed was suffocating. For once, the younger brother could not find words, only lowering his head as James turned away, his shoulders tight with rage. Diep, who had overheard, placed a gentle hand on James's arm later. You can't keep sacrificing yourself like this, she whispered. But James shook his head. If I don't, who will? If I abandon him, he's lost forever, just as if I abandon Nye. She's lost too. His words revealed the truth. His sense of duty was both his greatest strength and his deepest wound. Meanwhile, Diep tried to keep life going for Nye. One morning, she took the girl to the orchard, baskets slung over their arms, the air thick with the scent of ripening fruit. We'll harvest the avocados today, she said gently. Nye looked up, her face lighting with curiosity. Will people buy them? Yes, Diep smiled. We'll bring them to market. You'll see how it works. The orchard was alive with the rustle of leaves, the weight of fruit bending branches low. Diep lifted Nye so she could reach the smaller ones, and the girl laughed as each green oval dropped into the basket with a satisfying thump. Together, they filled 2 baskets, the fruit gleaming under the sun like little treasures. By noon, they carried their harvest to the market. Nye stayed close to Diep's side, wide-eyed at the bustling scene. Vendors calling out their prices, customers haggling, the air filled with smells of grilled food and fresh herbs. Diep laid out the avocados neatly, arranging them with care. At first, buyers passed by, uninterested. But then one woman stopped, picked up a fruit, squeezed it gently, and nodded. How much? Diep gave a fair price, and soon, word spread that her avocados were fresh and worth the money. Customers began to gather, and Nye watched in awe as coin after coin clinked into the little tin box. When the last avocado was sold, Diep crouched down to Nye's level, opening her palm to show the money. 120,000 dong, she said proudly. Nye's eyes shone. We did it? Yes, we did, Diep answered, pulling her into a hug. For a moment, amidst the uncertainty of their lives, they shared the triumph of honest labor. But the fragile joy could not withstand the next blow. That evening, James received the call that turned his hope into bitter disappointment. The officer's voice was grim. I'm sorry. The grandparents refuse to do the DNA test. They say they don't need proof, that she's not theirs. They won't accept her. James's hand tightened around the phone. And the child, they will just abandon her. They don't care. The officer admitted, they've already closed the matter. Diep's face fell as James relayed the news. Nye, sitting quietly nearby, sensed the tension. They don't want me? She whispered, her small voice cracking. James knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders firmly. Listen to me, Nye. It doesn't matter if they close the door. I will open another. You are not unwanted. You are not abandoned. You belong with us. She looked into his eyes, searching for lies, but found none. And though tears welled in her eyes, she nodded, pressing her forehead against his chest. That night, James lay awake, the ceiling above him a blur of shadows. His thoughts churned with fury, not at the grandparents, but at the cruelty of a society that could so easily cast aside a child. He would not let it stand. The next morning, he called his lawyer. If they refuse voluntarily, can we compel them? Through the courts? Through legal order? The lawyer hesitated. It's possible, but it will be difficult, costly, and perhaps damaging to the child emotionally. James's voice hardened. Do it anyway. I want to explore every option. Ly deserves her truth. And so began a new chapter of their struggle. Between the laughter of games and the rhythm of market days, between the quiet strength of Diep and the troubled presence of his reckless brother, James braced himself for a legal battle that might consume him. But as he watched Ly sleeping peacefully that night, curled beside Diep, her little hand resting trustingly on his arm, he knew there was no choice. Because the world had abandoned her. But he would not. The storm did not break overnight. It gathered in silence, like the heavy clouds that linger before unleashing their full force. And James felt its weight pressing on every part of his life. By day, he sat in meetings, papers spread across mahogany tables, his mind only half present as business partners debated contracts and strategies. By night, his phone lit up with calls from his lawyer, updates on filings, new barriers that the law and society seemed determined to erect between Ly and her right to belong. But the fiercest battles were not fought in offices or courtrooms. They were fought in the quiet moments, when Ly's wide eyes sought his reassurance, when Diep's tired hands brushed against his, silently begging him to hold the line a little longer. It began with the petition. James's lawyer warned him that compelling grandparents to take a DNA test was rare, unprecedented in their district. But James insisted, this is not about convenience. He argued, his voice low, sharp. It is about a child's right to identity. If we allow them to erase her so easily, then what justice exists for the abandoned? The lawyer sighed but did as instructed, and within weeks, James found himself standing in a courtroom, the stark white walls echoing every word like thunder. The grandparents did not appear. Their lawyer did, cold-eyed and dismissive, claiming the matter was closed, that the family would not be dragged into what they called an unnecessary scandal. James stood, fists clenched, voice trembling with fury as he addressed the judge. Scandal? You call the rejection of a child a scandal? No, it is cruelty. And I will not stand by while cruelty decides her fate. Though the judge promised to review the case, James walked out with a hollow feeling in his chest. It would take months, perhaps years. He could not let Ly live in limbo that long. Outside the courthouse, Diep slipped her hand into his, her touch anchoring him. You're fighting for her, she said softly. And that is enough. Even if the world doesn't give her the truth, she will always know you gave her love. James looked into her eyes, weary yet blazing with conviction, and whispered back, love isn't enough if the law brands her unwanted. At home, the struggles multiplied. His brother's debtors grew louder, more threatening, circling like vultures. One night, after a heated confrontation in which James paid yet another installment to keep his brother safe, he returned to find Ly awake, clutching her blanket tightly. Are you angry? She asked timidly. James sat beside her, brushing hair from her forehead. Not at you, he said. Never at you. She hesitated, then whispered, sometimes I think, maybe they're right. Maybe I wasn't meant to be wanted. His chest ached at the words. Listen to me, Ly, he said firmly, lifting her chin so her eyes met his. The world can lie. People can lie, but your worth is not decided by their blindness. You are wanted, more than you can ever imagine. She nodded, but tears still slipped down her cheeks as she fell asleep in his arms. Days blurred into weeks. The orchard blossomed again. The house rose brick by brick, and still the fight dragged on. James found moments of fragile joy in teaching Ly arithmetic at the table, in watching Diep hum while stirring a pot of soup, in hearing laughter echo across the half-built walls of their new home. Yet, shadows lingered. The grandparents issued statements through their lawyer, accusing James of exploiting the child for sympathy. The community whispered. Some sided with James, others with tradition, claiming that forcing blood ties was dishonorable. James bore it all in silence, channeling his anger into determination. Then came the letter, official, stamped, heavy in his hands. The judge had ruled. Though the court could not force DNA testing, it recognized James's guardianship of Ly, based on her abandonment and his ongoing care. It was not the victory he dreamed of, but it was protection. It gave him the legal right to stand as her guardian, to enroll her in school, to shield her from being taken or cast aside again. When Diep read it, her eyes filled with tears. "You did it," she whispered. James shook his head. "No, we did it. And she finally has a place." But the story did not end there. That evening, James gathered Diep and Ly at the construction site, where the last bricks were being laid. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold. "This is our home," James said, his voice breaking. "No court, no rejection, no cruelty can take this from us. Here, we decide what family means." Ly looked up at him, her small hand clutching his tightly. "Does that mean I'm your daughter?" The words pierced James's heart. He dropped to his knees, pulling her close. "Yes," he said fiercely. "My daughter. Always." Diep knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around them both, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. In that embrace, Ly's trembling stopped. For the first time, she believed. Weeks later, as the house warmed with life, James's brother appeared at the door. Humbled, broken, he admitted his failures, begged forgiveness. James listened in silence before speaking. "Family is not about debts. It is about responsibility. You will not take from us again, but if you are willing, you can still be part of what we are building." His brother wept, and for the first time in years, James allowed himself to hope that even the most lost could be found. The orchard grew heavy with fruit once more. The market days turned from survival to celebration, and Ly began school with a new satchel and shoes that James had carefully chosen for her. Each night, as he read her stories until her eyelids drooped, James felt the weight of the battle ease. He had not won everything. The grandparents remained distant. The scars of rejection still haunted Ly's dreams. But he had secured her a future built not on abandonment, but on belonging. On the final evening of summer, they sat together in the garden of their finished home. Lanterns glowed softly, the air alive with the scent of jasmine. Diep leaned against James. Ly curled in her lap. And for the first time in months, silence was not heavy, but full. Sacred. James looked at them. The woman who stood beside him, the child who had chosen him, the family they had created out of pain and persistence. And he whispered, almost to himself, "We are enough." The battle had been long, cruel, relentless, but love had outlasted it. And in the quiet glow of that evening, beneath the shelter of their hard-won home, they knew the world could not erase them. They had written their own truth, and it was stronger than blood.